So we left off last time on Sadi Zion Ahmed Aleph, and we I think we kind of finished the sugya. I want to just remind us of where we left off. Um, we're talking about Chalev Mipapeya, and and then we said that Chalev, spreads. And then the first line is Shani Chalev Mipapeya. It's Chalev is different because it spreads, and therefore, if you cook if you roast a lamb or goat in its chalev, the whole thing will become asur. And then we said, ubechalev asur, is it true that chalev really will asur it? Amar Rava Bar Chana, uvda have kamei de Rav Yochanan, v'kinishta de Maon, this famous place, the Kinishta, the house of gathering in Maon. They cooked this gedi in such a way, and they asked Rabbi Yochanan, it's not all aser. You can peel away pieces and eat and keep going. Why do you peel away? Because if you just take a big bite out of it, you might get the chaylev. So you got to keep peeling until you get close to the chaylev. And presumably, like the last peel that you make, if you see some chaylev on it, you'll throw it away. You're going to throw away something that you peel because that was why you were peeling. You were peeling to get to as close as you could. And now the answer, we're going to give three answers, which we went over last time. Ahu kachush. No, that was because it's kachush, because it's weak fat. Or actually, there's two explanations. It's kachush. It's thin, or it does not much fat there, or the fat is of a quality that doesn't spread. Rav Huna Bar. So actually, if we look at this Tosfos, look at this little Tosfos, Ahu Kahush. Maybe Reuven, you want to read that one?
Yes, but can you remind me where we are, because I came in a few minutes late.
Oh, you just came in a minute. You're right. I'll pick someone else. Yeah. How about Eitan Belustin?
Sure. Hahu kachush hava, Faresh Rabbeinu Tam, kachush hava, v'lakach share dechelav kachush eno mipapea. So Rabbeinu Tam explains that it was kachush, and therefore it's permitted because chelav that's kachush doesn't spread.
Right. There's something qualitatively about it that doesn't spread. Okay, go ahead.
ועוד יש לומר, kachush hava v'yesh bo me'at chelav ubatel b'shishin. You could also say that it was kachush, meaning that it was just a little bit of chelav, and therefore it's batel 1 in 60.
Right. Now, so what does that mean? That means quantitatively, not qualitatively. Quantitatively, there's not enough of it to forbid the rest of the meat. Now, we're going to learn later a sugya. I mean, not in the Gemara, but in the when we do the Shulchan Aruch, about a tipa of chalav. It hits the outside of a pot, and we say we don't know how far it spreads. So we say the worst case is it spreads just enough to usher a large area, but not enough to forbid the whole thing. So, in other words, if it spreads far enough, then it's batel, because it's spread to a ratio of 1 in 60. But it could be that it doesn't spread fully. This Tosfos seems to say kachush have v'yesh bo ma'at chelev ubatel b'shishim. He seems to be assuming that the chelev will spread fully and not just partially. Because if it would spread partially, then maybe it wouldn't be batel and shishim. Maybe it would just spread just enough to forbid a certain area, and not keep going. And there seems to be no doubt, no safek here even, whether it'll spread fully or not. It's for sure going to spread fully. It's interesting to compare it to the tipat chalav. We can say that tipat chalav is less fatty, and therefore it doesn't spread. But it's just interesting that there's a kind of parallel here. That here we're saying that it for sure spreads fully, and therefore it's bata. That's also the second shot. Okay, that's the first teretz, that it was chalev kachush, and therefore that's why Rabbi Yochanan permitted.
Rav Nachum?
Yeah.
I have a Matthias question here. I've never, is is the chalev even still recognizable when you cook it? Like I imagine, like when you cook like a piece of fish, like I think like or chicken, you see the fat like bubble up, like it actually moves through the thing, right? And so I mean, could you actually like peel it until you locate the chalev? Or is it like the chalev is just like mixed up completely in it and there isn't any chalev you would actually find?
Well, I mean, isn't that kind of what he was saying? That it was, that's the first terutz, that it's ketiv kachush, that it didn't spread.
Yeah. It
So
didn't spread.
therefore
But
you
the
could
second
find
one.
it.
Yeah, but the second
And the
one,
second one, it spreads fully.
yeah.
So you, so it's gone. You don't know where it is.
Well, it's got to be because it's Ad Shema, it's still, isn't it Ad Shemagia, Lechalbo in the Gemara?
Oh, you're saying because he still says Ad Shemagia the Chelbo.
Yeah.
You're asking a kasha. Let me rephrase your kasha.
I
You're
really am
saying,
asking a kasha based on Mitzias. Yeah.
you're
So,
asking a kasha. You're saying if he says that there's ma'at chelev and it's batel b'shishim, well, no, the answer is going to be like this. Mostly it stays in one spot. And whatever does spread is batel b'shishim. So you kolef until you get to what's mostly in one spot. And whatever has voyaged further into the outer regions of the meat is going to be batel because it's all because there wasn't much of it to enough of it to ruin the meat.
yeah. So, or I guess you could say that it's Tamo that's moving and the Mama Show is staying in place also as a possibility. So,
Okay, yeah. Okay, so that's the first answer, that it's kachush, and that's why Rav Yochanan permitted it, and that's why we can still say that that really the normal case of roasting a gedi and its chelbo would forbid the whole gedi. Now the second shot. Here, maybe Reuven, you want to read the second shot?
Okay, and where are we in the
Rav
Gemara? Yes.
Rav Huna bar Yehuda.
Rav Huna bar Yehuda. Well, okay, yes, here I am. Rav Huna bar Yehuda Amar Kulia bechelba Hava Vesharya. Ravin bar Rav Ada
Wait, no,
Amar.
stop. That's all.
Okay,
That's the answer.
okay, that's the answer. So the case that so according to Rav Huna bar Yehuda, the case that we're dealing with is a kidney of a gedi roasted with its chalev, and it's permitted. Rabbi Yochanan permits it.
Right.
And
Stop. Now look at Tosfot.
and then the Tosfot. Okay.
Well,
Kulia
actually, first look at
b'chel-
Rashi. First look at Rashi. Kulia b'chelbo have visharia. The third line in Rashi.
Yes. Kulia b'chelba hava v'shaya. So we're dealing with a case of the kidneys in the chalev of a gedi. It's permitted mishum demafsik karma, because there's a membrane that separates.
Right.
And that prevents it separates the chalev from the kulia, and so it prevents the chalev from penetrating into the kulia.
Okay.
This membrane.
So there's a membrane that keeps the fat from entering the rest of the meat. Here, Josie, why don't you read the Tosfot Kulia?
Sure. Kulia bechelba hava v'sharya. Lefi shehaya krum mafsik. V'nira shetzarik lahasir mina kulia.
Wait. So first of all, he says, like Rashi, there's a krum that's mafsik. That's the same thing. Karma is krum. There's a membrane. Okay, so he agrees with Rashi. Go on.
So that's kulia. Kidei klipa.
No, Venera.
V'nira shetzarik lahasir mina kulia kidei klipa. Lefi shehakrum atzmo muvla mina chelev keda'amin le'el. Daf tzadi gimel. Plata krame hava. Plata krame hava.
Okay, so wait. So what is he saying here?
You have to basically it's the membrane that absorbs the fat, and that you have to remove from around the kidney before you eat it. Right? That's
Wait,
what
you have to
saying.
remove You have to remove the membrane, but you have to remove just the membrane?
Kidei klipa, you have to remove that and a little extra.
Why?
because the krum itself absorbs a little bit, and so it might pass a little bit through. I'm assuming that's what he's trying to say.
Right.
here.
I guess the krum becomes usher, and now you get this hot meat touching some krum, which is usher, so it's osir k'dei klipa. In other words, there's a kind of chain reaction. The krum became usher, but it's mafsik, but it's still usher, and so therefore it's two pieces of hot meat touching each other. So there's a k'dei klipa you have to remember. And it's funny that he says k'dei klipa because Tosos previously convinced us that we have to take k'dei netila always. But maybe he means k'dei netila.
So now he's going to just add a little bit extra here about the fat and size. V'im tomar litzar kulia mishum deva'afea ba loven kulia the Rabbi Yochanan gufe asar lehel. So that we have this idea that there's this interior fat, and so because of that, that fat would spread out, and you would then have to usher the whole kidney. Loven kulia kedamrin demamaret le. This is something that you can scrape off. V'yesh lamarkevin lo asur ela midirabanan eno oser et hakulia. So this is something that you can that you can scrape out this interior fat. It sounds like, and then in response you can say this is only asur midirabanan. It's not actually the chaylev that we're concerned with.
Wait. So let me translate a little bit more precisely. He says, and if you'll say, let's forbid the kidney because the fat of the lumen in the kidney, whatever the lumen is exactly, some kind of lobe, maybe, I don't know, in the kidney that spreads. And why do I say that? This tells us, why do I say that you should forbid the kidney? Because Rabbi Yochanan gufe asar le'el, because Rabbi Yochanan forbid it, the lumen of the kulia, the lumen of the kidney, because kedamrinan, because he said over there, dimimaret le, that you got to remove it. They forbid it, you got to remove it. So we know that's just a proof that it is in fact usher. You got to remove it. So he's saying, why don't we forbid the whole kidney? Because here you didn't remove it. So now v'yesh lomar, and this is his answer.
It says this interior fat is only forbidden midirabanan. It says v'yesh lamarkevin lo asur ela midirabanan eno oser et hakulia. So because this interior fat is only midrabanan asur, if you didn't accidentally,
What do you have to do according to Rabbi Yochanan?
you still have to scrape it out. You've got to physically remove
Right.
it.
It's interesting. Klal is there to saying here. I don't know if it's a klal. He's saying in this case, if it's asur d'Rabbanan, so we're not going to say that it forbids something else, but you can't eat it itself.
It's a personal chumrah that he had.
Well, it says here d'Rabbanan.
Yeah, well,
It's a gezerah d'Rabbanan. You can't eat it. I don't know if it's a personal chumrah.
that he was mamarate, that he went to this degree,
Right. Maybe that degree was a personal chumrah.
that he went over it. I think that's what the other Rishonim say. But okay.
But he says it's Aino Asar Elamid Rabbana, right? And therefore, but it's a kind of interesting rule, kind of. I don't know if it's a rule that you can generalize, but he's saying, in fact, can anybody think of a case where we don't generalize this rule, where we do say something else to Rabbanan can forbid other things? I mean, there's got to be cases like that. I can think of one, which is the Chaylev Hagid, which is Asar Rabbanan, but forbids other things. But here he's saying this doesn't. It's an interesting rule, interesting idea that he's saying. Okay, so that's the second teretz. Noam, why don't you read the third teretz? Why? Again, our question is, why did Rabbi Yochanan permit this gedi? He shouldn't have permitted the gedi. And the second teretz is that because it was actually not a gedi, it was a kidney, and it was just the fat of the kidney, which has a krum. Okay, and the third teretz.
Rabin Bar Rabin bar Rav Ada Mar Kilkit Beyel Pasava, Atu Shailua Le Rabbi Yochanan, Bamar Lahu, Itame Kapila Arma. So Rabin bar Rav Ada says it was some kind of a tray fish in a meat pot. And they went to go ask Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan actually said to them that a non-Jewish cook should come and taste it for them to see if it's been noten tam.
Yeah, right. So what is he tasting? What is the non-Jewish chef tasting?
I think he's tasting the meat stew to see if it has that tray
So you say
fishy
it's not
taste.
just a meat. So wait a second. It's not just a meat pot. It's a pot with meat in it.
Right. That's how I understood it. Yeah.
Right. You got to say it like that. It's a pot with meat in it, and then he put in it some tray fish. He put in some shrimp. Some shrimp fell into because if you notice, Rashi says shekets. He says shekets dagim ktanim. So maybe it's like a shrimp actually. So he says some kind of shrimp fell into your meat stew, and you'll ask, and so therefore we totally misunderstood the case. Nothing to do with a gedi. It was Rav Yochanan wasn't talking about anything to do with our case, and somebody really got the story all wrong. Must not have been there, and it must have heard it over third hand, and he got it all wrong, and it's really totally different case, and therefore we can still say that a gedi that you cook in its chelbo is usher. And Rav Yochanan only permitted this thing, and he didn't even permit it. He just said you have to have it tasted. He didn't actually permit it. So everything is wrong. It's not a gedi, and it's not permitted. Right? It's all wrong. Okay. So here, now continue on, Noam, in the Gemara.
Okay, Amar Rava, Amarish, Havakakashia Liadadanya, Kadera She Bishal Ba Basar, Lo Yavashal Ba Chalav, Be'im Bishal, Benoten Tam, Truma Lo Yavashal Ba Hullin, Be'im Bishal, Benoten Tam, Bishlama Truma Ta'im La Kohen, Ella Basar Bechalav Mantima. Ashadamar Rabbi Yochanan, Samchinan Akapila Arma, Achanami, Samchinan Akapila Arma. So
go back, yeah.
Rava says that before hearing this revised version about Rabbi Yochanan, he was always confused by this Baraita, which says that you have a pot that you've cooked meat in it, you're not allowed to cook dairy in it, and if you do cook dairy in it, then it's only aser benoten tam, and same with truma and chulin. You're not allowed to cook chulin in it.
Right. So these pots, we haven't learned the sugya yet, but presumably these pots are not just old basar pots, but they've been used recently for meat, because we're going to learn a rule that if things are already a day old or 24 hours old, then they aren't really basari anymore. Of course, you still shouldn't cook the opposite food in them. You're not allowed to cook the opposite food, but you don't have to say that a goy should taste it, or you don't have to say betama. You know that the tam that's in there is no longer good. But here we're talking about a case where the pot has been recently used. Let's say 6 hours ago you used it to cook meat, and now it says lo yibashel b'chalav ve'im bashel b'benoten tam. You can taste it. And what was Rava's problem with this?
Wait, can I just ask a question before the answer? Yeah. I don't even know if I have an answer to that. But when here it says no tentam, does that mean like the dairy that you've cooked in this meat pot would be aser if it received the flavor of the meat brought through the pot? Is that what we're saying?
Exactly. That's exactly what we're saying.
Okay, great. Okay.
If you would taste the milk and you say, gee, I taste some meat in this milk, then it would be forbidden. But if you taste it, it just tastes like regular milk to me, then it'd be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And what's Rava's problem with this?
Well, he says for truma, there's no problem because the Cohen could taste the Hullin, and if the Cohen then tastes some of the truma flavor in the Hullin, that's not an isser for the Cohen himself, right? But for basar b'chalav, it is a problem because if you taste the halav and you taste some of that meat flavor, like we were just talking about, you've just violated an isser.
Right, you just violated. Now, of course, right. So Rava didn't understand how you could possibly do this. And what did he assume? He assumed that, of course, you couldn't rely on a Gentile. He assumed, of course, you cannot rely on a Gentile for this. And that was the big Kiddush. When he heard Rav Yochanan say, rely on a Gentile, now that he hears that, he understands who is doing the tasting. Hachanami, samchinana kefela arami. We can rely on a Gentile baker or Gentile chef to taste it. Okay, look at Rashi here. Let's ask Eitan. Can you read Rashi on Litaime Kefela?
Litame kafela. Nachtom oved kochavim. V'ashmo'inan demutar lismoch alav lefi tumo v'lo yodi'ihu shetzrichim lo ledaber isur ledavar isur veheter. So it's a non-Jewish cook, and we learn from this that it's permitted to rely on him based on how he's based on, I guess, what he says about this.
Yeah, so this is a halachic expression. Lefi tumo. Lefi tumo. Say something.
Is that like his innocence?
Literally, it means according to his
Literally.
innocence. And what is the halachic? How do we guarantee that he's innocent?
We don't tell him that it's for Isur Veheter, so he's sort of ignorant about.
Right.
He doesn't know the
He's
implications.
ignorant about why
of
we're
anything.
asking him. He just thinks he doesn't know the circumstances of the case. He just thinks like we're asking him because we're curious or for some other reason. We don't tell him that we need him for a matter of Isser V'Heter. But we maybe do tell him that we need to know. Maybe we ask him, do you, we don't just like take, we actually ask him, do you taste this milk? But we don't tell him that we say maybe we're doing a contest. I bet my friend $10 that this tastes like milk. And he says it doesn't, it tastes like meat. So we do tell him we want to know, but we don't tell him it's for the purpose of Isser V'Heter. Wait, Reuven,
Yeah, I wanted to ask about this because I don't really understand why do we want to keep this information from him, and why is this his tum'o, his state of innocence? Why? I just don't understand.
Well, look at the words of Rashi. He says mutar l'smoch alav. So what is it? Why would we not somech on somebody?
You don't want to suspect that he's trying to. He's not invested in this kashrut thing, and he wants to trick you up. So here you know that he's impartial. He doesn't know why. I was going to say it almost sounds like he's a better judge than maybe the Kohen case, because the Kohen knows that something is riding on it and has an interest to make it mutter. Maybe here the Goy has no interest.
But he does
Actually,
have
the Kohen is easier to make it usher, because if it's usher, then he'll get to keep it.
It's a
But
the Kohen.
Yeah, Kohen get to keep it. But
I just want a short point from the years of reading weekly New York Times restaurant reviews. For connoisseur, I mean gourmet, whatever, they like a lot of flavors. You know, it's not like what flavor do we have there? More flavor of the crab, the milk, the hint of mint that's with the thigh of some animal. So if you don't tell him and just ask him, it's kind of like just a question.
you just right. He's going to want to give. It's like when you have these wine tastings and they say there are hints of
That's what I'm saying, right?
of
exactly.
hints of
Hints,
the
right?
leaves
Yeah.
raspberry leaves, I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
So they want to show off that they know things. Yeah. So, but
But
it also has. But Rashi adds this proviso. Not only does he have to be a non-Jewish chef, he has to be uninformed about the significance of this, so that he won't be cunning in his answer. He won't try to be cunning. He'll just simply answer, because he might change his answer if we tell him what we're interested in doing. So Rama got his answer. Arama, look here. I want to ask Max. Can you read the Tosfot of Al Basar B'Chalav?
Just quickly before that one, I wanted to ask about the Tosfos on Samchinan, on Capella, because I thought to read this as being against Lefitumo a little bit. I
All right,
wanted
so
to,
read it. So read it. I was going in order, but you can read that one too.
yeah.
So go read that one first. Yeah.
Is that okay? Okay.
So it's on Samchinan Al Kefela.
Right.
Right. We can. That's his last words, really. Samchinan Al Kefela Aramit. He doesn't quote the word Aramit, but Samchinan Al Kefela. We rely on a chef.
Afagav de'ovi kochavim hu kivan de kfela hu lo meshaker shelo yafsid umanuso. That even though it's a non-Jew, we actually do trust Dafka, this cook, because I mean, this is a little bit what you were saying in terms of the person's, the notes that they can taste. That they're worried that if they, it could hurt business if they lie about what is and isn't in the, in the piece.
I have a question. Who's gonna know?
Who's gonna know what?
That they
he's
were
lying?
wrong.
Yeah.
That they were wrong. How will
They
they?
don't
How
know.
will they
For all
know?
they know, you already tasted it and you're testing their chef abilities.
Right.
I mean,
Because
the
if
Jew
you
Right.
spend
knows,
halachas-
because if you say this doesn't taste at all like meat, and then the Jew drinks their milk and they taste meat, then this will in fact be discovered. So it's
Exactly.
something that's like, really galot. But the Tosfot here does also point out like a tension between them.
Wait. You said two words in Hebrew. Translate those.
That is
Rui
like
legalot.
something that's like going to be revealed, right? It's not something that you could get
Because
away
he's
with.
not going to be able to keep this a secret very long, because as soon as he permits it, you're going to taste it. Of course, if he forbids it, if he says it doesn't taste like milk, well, he doesn't know that you're not going to eat it, because remember, we're not samchinan Allah. He doesn't know why we're asking him. So even if you say it doesn't, even if he says it doesn't taste like, even if he says it does taste like meat, he doesn't know that you're not going to eat it because of that. So he might be afraid that you'll eat it. You're about to eat it. So you're going to find out. It's ra'ui ligalot, as Lexi said. What do you want to say, Lexi?
The other thing that's kind of a tension between the Tosfot and Rashi is that, like, the Tosfot say that the value of the kfela is dafka because since this is his job and he doesn't want to lose it, then he's going to have more of an incentive not to lie. But the issue is you actually like have more of an incentive not to lie if you know what's happening, right? Like, as in, if it's about losing your parnasa, then actually Lefitu doesn't have to be that like you don't know what's happening. In fact, in some ways, it helps if you know what's happening and you're like, oh, they're going to go around telling people that I lied to them about this, and like ruin my reputation, right? Whereas if it's somebody whose parnasa isn't at stake, then theoretically the idea is like, oh, we just don't want them to know what I even want, what answer I want from them. But in this case, in some ways, the sort of parnasa aspect leans more towards them knowing to an extent what you're asking them about.
Or knowing the significance of it, knowing that it's important, and that they right. I think it's sort of a point like that. Of course, you don't have to read it. You could say that Tosfos thinks that you also need to know, and he's all and also. In fact, if you look in the Ran and in the Khatam Sofer, they discuss this question. The Khatam Sofer says there's no machloket between Rashi and Tosfot. They want and they want them both.
Right, but I think Joseph thinks that they're in disagreement.
Yeah, you could. Who says who? Lexi?
I'll have to double check, but I'm pretty sure the Beis Yosef presents them as being in disagreement. But I can double
Uh-huh. We could we'll get to it. But you see that it's certainly, let's say it like this, they're certainly emphasizing different things. Rashi seems to be emphasizing the tumo part, and the Tosfos seems to be emphasizing that he is a expert, and that's why they're giving sort of two different rationales. Joel.
No, and it's not clear Rashi needs them to be a kfela, right? The kfela might just be Lashon Hovet, like who's around to taste it for you.
I also thought that, but I have a reason to say otherwise from the
I
next.
can read Rashi both. I have reason to say otherwise too, just because it's someone who could taste it and give you a good answer, but
No, but because, well, first of all, we'll see that the Gemara keeps on talking about a kfela, and we keep on saying that he's a chef. In fact, we even say at one point kfela, we don't even use the word arami. We just say a chef. So we
But
see
on
that
the
the
other,
Gemara itself seems to be emphasizing kefela. He has to be a chef. I mean, you could say that's just,
the
yeah.
Kohen's not a chef, right? The
Yeah,
Gemara
the
doesn't
Kohen is
use,
not a chef, which,
right? So the Gemara doesn't use the term kfela to imply that, which if in both cases we're trying to assess tam.
no, so exactly. So that's what proves Tosfos' point, that when it's a Jew, it doesn't have to be a kefela. And when it's a non-Jew, it has to be a kefela. So why is that?
Well, so it would seem
So
to be about
if
Ne'eman
it's the
Newt, not about
Fitumo, wait,
expertise.
let me just finish my thought. If it's the Fitumo, then every goy could be the Fitumo. But if it's according to his mumchiyut, according to his expertise, as his reputation, his parnasa, then that only is relevant to obviously to a chef, and that's only because by a goy we need something extra to believe him, and the fact that he might lose his parnasa is that extra thing. But by a kohen, we don't need anything extra to believe him because he's a Jew and an Eid Echad Ne'aman B'Yisurim. One witness is Ne'aman in a case like this. We don't need anything extra.
But I think that there's a distinction here between ne'emanut and like mumchiyut, the question of like trustworthiness and the question of expertise. I actually think can be disentangled, right? Because if we're saying that the distinction between the Kohen, who doesn't have to be a kfela, and the non-Jew, who maybe according to some reads does, is that because the Kohen's a Jew, we trust what they say, then the relevance of the non-Jew being a kfela is not that they're expert in food and that they have particularly sensitive.
No, not at all. Exactly.
It's just
But
that we like think that they're more trustworthy if their reputation is on the line.
exactly what I was saying.
Not that like we need food expertise. And so if they're
Exactly, 100%, 100%. That's exactly my point. That's exactly what I was trying to say. We're not looking at the kefela as a person who can get find the fine flavors, but we're looking at him as a person who cares about his reputation and therefore won't lie. And the proof that that's the right reason is because we allow a kohen of any type. So we're not interested in fine tasting. We're interested in gross tasting and in general tasting. What a normal person would taste.
That's the general halacha, that we're interested in gross tasting.
Exactly.
That's the whole question. No, we'll get to the whole question of how much of a hargasha. By the way, I do want to point out, if you look what the Kohen Gadol looks like, he does look like a chef. He's wearing that funny hat and
Yeah.
he's got the apron. I didn't make that up. As a kid, I said, why is he dressed as a chef? Well, he is.
Actually, he is a chef because he's
He
cutting
is
up meat and he's
okay.
roasting it.
Yeah.
All right, the chief chef. Okay.
They spend
Okay.
most of their time cooking. I was just gonna say, like, shot.
I think we got some very good conclusions here, though. I think we can say that it's pretty strong reason to say that Tosfos is for sure correct. And then we can say that Rashi might also agree, and he's adding an extra condition maybe that you need Lefi Tumo. In other words, he knows his reputation is online, but he doesn't know that the question is about whether the Jews will be able to eat this thing or not. So wait, did you have any questions, Max? You wanted to look at that Tosfos? You had a question about it.
No, my question was what we just talked about for 10 minutes. So
Okay, good. Okay, so now since you read that Tosfos, let's have Josie. Why don't you read Aval?
Sure, aval basar v'chalav man ta'im le. So did we even? Oh, that's right. Yeah, we did get there. Okay. V'hadala parich amat nitan on the previous page,
What's his question?
So the question is this coming to address what we've already talked about in the Mishnah right before?
No, a little bit sharper. Try again.
The Hadala Parich Aminitin, is this not coming to sort of
No.
to knock down or to address, against this Mishnah that we just had, right?
Not exactly. No. Anybody else have an idea? Yeah, Eitan.
I think it's asking, why did it not ask the same question about the Mishnah?
Exactly. That's right. Why didn't we ask this question, man taimle, who would taste it, when we were talking about the Mishnah? Because let's go back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Yerech, shenipashel bagira nashe, im yesh ba benoten tam, harezu asura. Why didn't it say, but how can you taste? Why did the Gemara ask, or Rava ask, who could taste it? You can't taste the Yerech that the Gid was cooked with it. Maybe it has the flavor of the Gid, and you're eating an Isser. Why does it say benoten tam? Who would taste it? So
but it gives a shear. It says something very different.
That's the answer. This is what I would call.
It's a
if it would
leading
not be
question.
Tosfos that said it, if somebody else would have said this question, I would say it's a klutz kasha. It's not really much of a kasha, because the answer is very plain, and that's what you're about to read.
It says
Mishum,
because we have this shear that it's like,
because the Mishnah immediately goes ahead and tells us how we're going to find out if there's flavor there without having to. So we don't need to ask the question who's going to taste it, because the Mishnah says we're not going to taste it. We're just going to evaluate it as though it were, basar belefet.
But now we have another problem. It says aval kasha aminitin de perikol basar. So we've got this Mishnah a little bit further ahead on 108. The tipat chala shenafla al haticha basar im yesh ba benoten tam v'chulei. So there we have a little drop of milk falls on your meat, and if there's enough benoten tam, then it's asur. Hava matzi lemafrich. And here there might be a case that we could actually compare this case to that.
In other words, there we could no matzi the mafrich. What does that mean? Matzi the mafrich.
You could use this to contest this or to answer this.
No, matzi. We are able to ask the question. Matzi the mafrich. It would be reasonable to ask the question that we just said was not reasonable to ask in our Mishnah. It's not reasonable to ask the question in our Mishnah because our Mishnah says measure it. But in its other Mishnah, it would have been reasonable to ask the question because there it didn't it didn't say measure it against basar or lefet or something. It just said if it gives no 10 time, it's usher, and it didn't give how to measure it. So you could matzi the mifrach. You could ask. Rava could have asked this question on the Mishnah. So let me make the question even stronger for Tosfos. Why did he ask the question on a Braita? There's an actual Mishnah that he could have asked the question on. Better to ask on a Mishnah, which everybody, which is more power, which is a more authoritative source. Ask on the Mishnah. He doesn't understand the Mishnah. What do you mean tell he doesn't understand the Braita? How could he understand the Mishnah? That's really Hazve Matze Lemafri. He could have asked. And go on, but can.
V'chein amanit in the perk batter the Masechet Avodah Zarah. Yaim v'mayim v'mayim v'yaim v'noten ta'am. So we have this
there in the water case. How could you? Why didn't he ask? How are you going to taste it? You can't taste yain nesech. So now he gives his answer.
V'yesh lamar the hatam kal l'sha'er b'shishim. So there we have this batel b'shishim measurement.
What does it mean kal l'sha'er?
There it's relatively easy to determine if we're batel b'shishim.
Well, okay, he's going to explain why. I think.
Ein kal l'sha'er ma sheboleh ha'kedera.
Masha balua b'kedera.
Balua ha'kedera. Ela al yedei ta'ima.
Ela al yedei ta'ima. So what's his answer? This is his first answer. What's his
So the
first
first-
answer?
So he's saying that, I want to ask, why don't we discuss this if you have the case in Avodah Zarah where there's no obvious shiur that is given? And the answer is that we have this implicit shiur batal b'shishim, and it's relatively simple to measure the volume, whether or not I've dropped a
Why is
volume
it easy to measure volume in one case and difficult in the other?
in terms of like the meat and the.
Yeah, the two cases that it's difficult to measure. Sorry, that it's easy to. Well, you tell me which cases are easy and which cases are difficult.
So the case here with the volume of water that we have here, I mean
No, here our case here is the case of you cooked in a fleshik pot milk, or vice versa, and that's a case where it's difficult to measure the amount. Why is it difficult to measure the amount?
you don't know what's been absorbed. There's
In
a
the
question.
pot, exactly. But in the other cases, what was the case? A drop of milk that fell into a pot of meat, or a drop of yayin nesek that fell into yayin. There we know a drop versus the volume. We saw the drop, we saw the volume, we can measure shishim. So it was obvious to him, to Rava, that obviously we'll measure by shishim when it says noten tam. But over here, where it's balua, how are you going to know how much is in the pot? So there, it's not so obvious to him that you would use shishim. He knows about shishim. For sure he knows about shishim. But it doesn't seem like you could use it in a case of balua, because how much is there? Wait, Joel, you want to say something?
Yeah, the first answer, the Tosfot, right? The second answer doesn't work with this, but it seems to me to be getting at the idea that in cases of a possible isur, as opposed to like a Kohen can taste it, at least, the desired way to tell is measurement and not tasting. And now whether that's because measurement they think is better, or measure because they just don't want to rely on a non-Jew, I don't know. But like that, to them, measurement would be more ideal.
Well, you're gonna see that your point will be made. Rabbi Landis, I'm sure, doesn't like that. But wait, you're on mute, Rabbi Landis.
Yeah, I mean, it's, how could I say it? They used to have a trouble figuring out, how bad a venereal disease was, and they came up with penicillin. So the samach comes later, as you'll see in the Rashi in the next Amud. How the idea of samach comes later. Basically, you want to have tasting, or at least we have the analogy of tasting, basar b'lefet, and then but then you come to shishim. We don't need anything else. All we got is shishim. Takes care of all the problems. It becomes a scientific. I mean, pretty machmir, but it becomes a scientific, quote unquote, way of taking care of things. Anyway, that's what I say.
Right. It came along later, maybe, but you'll see. I think from the next statement of Rava, there's a certain hierarchy, and we'll investigate that when we get there. Josie, continue.
Okay. Masha. Inami de mashmale de hach braita al yedei ta'ima ayri dumia de truma de ta'am lekohen. So if so, then we learn.
No, inami is not if so. How do you translate inami?
Or if also, really.
Well, alternatively.
Isn't it also the case? Isn't it also the case?
No, I think you translate as alternatively. In other words, an alternative answer.
Okay. So alternatively, that we learn this braita in the
mashmaleh. What does the mashmaleh mean?
That we learn it.
No, there's no we.
Or that it is learned. Would you prefer the passive voice here?
Yeah, it is passive. The mashmaleh, it's implicit, or it implies to him. It teaches him. Mashmaleh. It seems to teach lay to him. It seems to teach It's mashmale. He understands it to mean mashmale. He infers from the text. Mashmale. It's heard to him. He hears in the text. He hears in the text the following: the hach braita.
This braita that we just been discussing, al yedei te'ima iri dumia de truma de ta'am le'kohen. That this braita has to be understood in that we find that it is like the kohen tasting whether or not there's truma within our mixture.
I didn't get to understand you. I didn't understand what you said.
So that this braita, that al yedei te'ima, that we're determining something on the basis of tasting, is like Iri.
What does Iri? What does Iri mean?
Well, I find, or it is found.
Well, the way we translate it normally is dealing with, is involved in the subject matter of.
Okay.
Is
To be
dealing
like
with.
Dumia the truma the ta'am la kohen. So this is like the case of the truma that a kohen is that we're using the
So
kohen.
what's his point? What's his second answer?
So his second answer, he's arguing that the response that we have where we are depending upon tasting is close to the case, or is the case of. I don't have a good answer for that question. I'm sorry.
Noam, what do you say?
Oh, I think Rava is struggling with the Baraita specifically because it's setting up Basar V'chalav as a parallel to the case of Truma and Hullin, in which we know that there's Peima, there's tasting, but the other sources that didn't set up that parallel, Rava didn't have that Tashi.
Right. In other words, because the Brisa goes on to talk about Te'ima in the case of the Kohen, therefore the first part of the Brisa must have also been talking about Te'ima, literally Te'ima, and not Shishim. And therefore he didn't understand how you could literally taste it. So either way, Tosfos. So what do we conclude from this Tosfos? What are we going to get from this Tosfos? Well, kind of almost what that the Tima is that Rava for sure knows about Shishim, and he knows about Te'ima, and in this particular Braita, it seemed to him particularly jolting that we talk about Te'ima for Basar B'chalav, and it's either because it would be, and the reason why it did that is because it's something that's hard to ascertain, to use Shishim for, or it's because linguistically the Braita seems like, stylistically the Braita seems to be talking about tasting. Joel.
Yeah, I take a little issue with Tosfos' second. Am I allowed to do that here? Is this
it's not a Gemara here.
I know. Just in Lomi Stefina, if I were not afraid, I would take issue with the Tosfos' second. Just because if you actually read the Braita itself, the Braita never says anything about tasting. It says Benoten Tam, which all the other things said, right? The Yerach, the key that was in the Yerach was also Benoten Tam. It was the same language. The Tosfos was trying to say he understands this to be about tasting because it mentions the truma that the Kohen can taste, but not that the part about, right?
In other words, the Braita doesn't actually say the words that the Kohen will taste it. It just says,
exactly.
It says Benoten Tam.
Yeah, that could mean Shishim, right?
Right. I think you have a good kasha.
And don't we later also say like Benoten Tam is Shishim is the sort of the amount, the threshold amount for tasting it, right?
Shishim's a replacement for Tima. That's it. That's all.
In other words, the Brisa literally is talking about Te'ima, says Rev Landis, and never mentions Shishim. So that's it. And don't tell me that Tima means Shishim. It means Tima. And that's how we learn.
But to respond to Rav Joel, if I may, I do think that Tosfot is actually understanding really well the language the Gemara is using in the name of Rava. Bishlama, Truma, Ta'im la Kohen, Ela Basar B'chalav Man Ta'im le. So even if that's not the pshat of the Baraita, the Gemara is telling us that that's the way that Rav is thinking about the Baraita, but I'm probably getting too much into Gemara.
Right, you could say that. Okay, yeah, I hear you. I think you're right. In other words, that's the way Rav does read it. Okay, Ori, why don't you take us further in the Gemara? Now, the Dalit here has to be removed, really, because the problem with the Dalit is that there's no real connection between these two things. Duh would mean like, and that this is based on that, and it's not, it's just a new statement. Now we just have a new statement of Amar Rava. And in fact, right, you see on the side, the Masarat Hashas says Tzrich Lomar Amar Rava. So go ahead, Ori.
Amar Rava, Amur Rabbanan b'taima, ve'amur Rabbanan b'kefila, ve'amur Rabbanan b'shishin.
Okay, so first of all, I just want to stop there for a second. First of all, Rava is saying the rabbis gave us 3 different methodologies for measuring Isser. What are they? Te'ima, Kefela, and Shishim. Te'ima is obviously by a Jew. Kefela is a chef. Notice it doesn't say Arami, it just says a chef.
Well, is
the point that we were talking about before.
Is the first te'ima actually someone tasting it, or is it taste?
Well, he's about to explain now. He gave that was the headline of the New York Times. Now he's going to give the first paragraph of the article.
Hilkach min b'she'eno mino dehetera. So therefore, when it's one thing in a different kind of thing, so I think that means the impure thing that falls into a different kind of thing. Do I have that right?
When you say impure, you mean
the non-kosher
like
thing
non-kosher
falls
flesh?
in. Yeah. Does it matter which is which?
Well,
Min
b'she'eno mino. 2 things that are of a different type.
Doesn't matter which is which. Okay. The hetera, b'taima. So that's the case in which you could taste it.
What does it mean, the hetera?
Something that's not an impure, not a non.
So wait, is one thing impure or one thing pure?
No, in this case, they're both mutter.
They're both pure things. They're both kosher things. So what does it mean, min be'eno mino?
2 different things 2 different kinds of things.
Look at Rashi, min b'she'eno mino.
I suppose, what do you call it?
Look at Rashi, min be'eno mino.
Rashi.
Second Rashi.
שהאדם יכול להבחין טעמו ושניהם של התר שיכול בין ברית לטעמו כגון truma v'chulin. Yeah, so truma is a good example of that. Hypothetically, both things are allowed things.
What is the first part? Yachol להבחין טעמו.
The person can tell, can separate the taste or recognize.
Why?
Because they're both allowed to them. Shneim shel heter.
No. That's the second point. B'shnehem shel heter. Why can he differentiate the taste?
Because they're 2 different things. It means b'she'eno bino.
Because they're right. Because they're 2 different things that have presumably different tastes. Right.
I understand. Okay.
You could have 2 different things that have the same taste, but there's 2 different things that have different tastes.
V'shneim shel heter she'achol ben brit l'ta'amo. And both of them are.
So what does it mean b'te'ima? What does it mean b'te'ima? Amur Rabbanan. So we said Hilchak min b'she'eno mino b'te'ima. What does that mean? B'te'ima al yedei who? By whom?
I mean, it looks like from the Rashi that it would have to. It's only interesting to mention in the case of truma and hullin,
right?
And the kohen tasting it
by a kohen.
The
isur. So, by the way, before we go on, look at the first Rashi though.
Va'amur Rabbanan b'shishin b'perek bata de Masechet Avodah Zarah paskinan hilchata b'chol yisurin Shabbat Torah b'shishim. So first of all, where did we see Rabbanan and Shishim? We actually didn't see in this Gemara, so we bring the Gemara where we saw it, which was in Avodah Zarah. Paskinan hilchata b'chol yisurin Shabbat Torah b'shishim ben basar b'chalav ben shar yisurin b'shishim. In that Gemara, it says that 60th is a measurement you can use for
everything.
any two types of for any
So Rava knew
kind
that
of
Gemara, of course. Okay, so that's the Shishim, and now we have the Isur. Now go on. So that he explained now, remember there are three statements, there are three methods. He explained the first one, Tima. The Isura,
the Isura
what does he mean, the Isura?
When a usher, this is still mean b'she'eno mino, but when an usher
Exactly. Still mean
falls,
b'she'eno mino, but
Yeah.
one of them is permitted and one is not permitted.
then you need the non-Jewish chef.
Here, look at Rashi. Oh no,
Rashi,
sorry. No, sorry.
finish
The
b'te'ima.
Isura.
Ti
Look at
Isura.
Rashi, the Isura.
כגון בשר בחלב שאין בן ברית יכול לטעמו, סמכין על הכפילה.
What word does he write there? Samchinan a kafela. He doesn't say Samchinan a kafela arami.
Oh, true.
He could have written kafela arami.
Well, the Gemara also here doesn't bring the word arama.
I'm just pointing out that Rashi certainly, he could have said Samchinan a aramai and not write the word kafela. You could have said Samchinan arami, Samchinan al goy.
Right.
And we would have known that he meant Lefi Tumo. He could have said Samchinan al goy, Lefi Tumo.
Yeah.
But he goes out of his way to insert the word chef, which implies to me that he holds like Tosfot. That you need to be a chef. We need to have your reputation on the line. It's not enough to just be a goy who's Lefi Tumo. Because then Rashi should have just said here, Samchinan a goy, or Samchinan a goy Lefi Tumo. But he puts a totally different word there. He doesn't even put the word goy. He says like kafela. And we know
Like
it's obviously a non-Jewish
fairness,
kafela. We know it's obviously a non-Jewish kafela, but he's choosing to emphasize the kafela aspect of
Right.
it. Max.
Do you make anything of him not saying Lefi Tumo here? We're just supposed to read back from the previous Amud, do you think?
It's a good question. I would say we read back. Because I don't think he's trying to make there's no differentiation between the cases. Joel, you want to say something?
No, just the language. Once you say kafela, big chef, very hard to say Lefi Tumo.
Right.
It's not
true.
because he's an expert. Just the language doesn't work. I wouldn't make a big deal out of it.
Okay, agreed. Joel, what do you say?
I think you're making too big a deal about the fact he uses a kafela. He's just copying the Gemara at that point, right? He's just
that's exactly what I wanted you to say. So then I'll say the point of the Gemara is saying that. And then I'll go even stronger and say the Gemara is saying that. B'kafela. I wanted you to say that, and that was my trap, actually.
Fair. I mean, yeah, I've got the Rambam on my side, but it's fair. It's fair. It's
I'm saying the Gemara. So the Gemara itself said kafela.
Yeah, and that's the question for all of this. Though, is always is it Davka or is it Lashon Hoveh? It's like just like who's around that you're going to interact with who could do this. All right, there's a chef.
Well, Rashi should have come and told us. I mean, the point is Rashi never rejects the idea of kafela, never brings it down to a level of a regular goy, and he certainly had plenty of opportunity. That's basically my point.
Yeah, no, that's correct. Yeah, I'm modeh for that. That's
okay. Anyway, I'm giving a certain reading. I agree with you. There are Rishonim that read it different ways. I'm just showing you how Gemara actually. The Gemara here is saying the Isura b'kafela. It says Dafka chef. Doesn't say an Aramic chef. It lost the language. It originally said kafela Arami, and it chose to stick to which of the two words? Kafela. Didn't choose to stick to use the word Arama. And Dafka Arama would have been the best word to use here because we're trying to emphasize that he's not Jewish, and that's why he can taste it. Okay, in any case, go on. Umin b'mino. So now Ori, continue.
Umin b'mino, and when it's the same kind of food that falls into more of that type of food, deleka lemekama te'ima, where you wouldn't be able to establish taste.
Why? Because they both have the same taste.
Because they both have the same taste. So that's
in other words, it's kosher milk. It's kosher milk with non-kosher milk, or maybe kosher shechted beef with non-kosher shechted beef. They're both kosher. They're both meat. They both have the same beef taste.
Yeah.
Um,
Inami min b'she'eno mino di isura. And
inami means
alternatively,
very good.
it would be it would be the same sort of situation. Min b'she'eno mino di isura deleka kefela, where you don't have a non-Jewish taster, chef taster. B'shishim hanhu.
Right. So first of all,
No,
we
just
see from this Gemara
b'shishim.
that the primary method is not shishim. The primary method is kafela. And only if we don't have a kafela do we use shishim. So we do see what Rabbi Lannis was saying, that the primary method is kafela, because why does he say the lake of kafela? Just use shishim to start with.
Right.
But apparently if it's minba she'eno mino and it's an isser, you should go to a goy. You should preferably go to a goy, and only use shishim as a last resort.
But there's an obvious reason to do that, I think. Why you
Which
wouldn't
is
want to rely on shishim? Well, it's possible I have more than shishim, and I can still get away with it if there's no taste. It's more makel in some cases.
I mean, you have less than shishim.
If I have I'm saying if I have
If I have
more than
50,
shishim
if I have
of a
50,
isser. Sorry, I meant I have more than shishim of an isser.
more than a 60th of an isser.
More
Yeah.
than a 60th of an isser, yeah.
Right.
Then I could get away with it if I have a taster who says it doesn't
Okay, so
no
it's more
touch.
makel. You could say it's more makel. I would say a different reason. I would just say it's more. That's the halacha, really. That's like the more thing that Torah is concerned about is that you shouldn't be tasting non-kosher food. And in other words,
Right.
that's the true determinant of food can be permitted if any isser there is batel. And batel means literally batel means I don't
Bound
feel it. I
and
don't
batel.
lo nirgash. I don't sense it. That is what is the heter of bittul. Shishim is just a way of hoping that it's batel because there's shishim there.
Right.
And in fact, what would be the din if I tasted something that was had one against shishim, and I ate it, and then I tasted the isser in it? Anyway, I can't go on eating it. Shishim is just a temporary replacement, and it gives me all it does is give me permission to start eating it. But it doesn't give me the permission to eat it all the way if I do taste it. So you see that, right?
I think the assumption is there's no way you're going to taste beyond the 60th, right? But
Well,
right,
that's
point.
kind of the
The
assumption.
nafkamina is your case, but yeah.
We're going to have a case where sometimes it's not, like if it's pepper.
Right.
Pepper, if you have pepper from a Vodazora pepper plant, I'm just checking Rashi. Look at Rashi, one more Rashi. Inami min b'she'eno mino is surah v'leki kafela.
Right. So also the case of min enomino of Isser, but there's no kafela. Oved kochavim to the ta'amei sha'arin
Now he
b'shishim.
does say kafela.
Yeah.
You have to read it. It's a run-on. If you read this Rashi, it's a run-on Rashi.
Kafela oved
The
kochavim.
leka kafela oved kochavim. We don't have a Gentile chef. Dilatime, who
To
is
taste it.
capable of tasting it for us. Bisharin and Bashishim. Okay. Let's take a break here. Come back in at the 10:11.
Can I just say something from?
Yeah.
Religious, excuse me. But it's tremendous yetzer hara for people that cook to taste something. Because what is it? Maybe it's not even chayav and a bracha. It's only a taste. So the Gemara is very careful. Gemara is making sure we don't taste. We don't taste it. You might think we could.
Mm-hmm.
We could taste it and spit it out. But no, don't taste it.
We'll actually see much later in the halacha a machloket with the Taz and other people about whether you can taste and spit out exactly what you can do.
Right.
But basically you can't taste it. What if you just stick out your tongue and taste it, but you don't put it in your mouth?
Right.
Okay, let's take a break. Okay. We're still on Sadi Zion Amud Aleph. Oh no, we were doing Amud Bet. We were just finishing this Gemara of the three different tools, and we use the rabbis told us, by the way, Amar Rabbana. In other words, the rabbis have created these three different mechanisms, three methodologies, either tima by a Jew, tima by a goy, or shishi. now,
So
now
when
we have
Rava,
this.
I have a question. And when Rava says this, is he listing these in? We're kind of assuming he's listing these in sort of preferential order, like that the ideal would be the tima, and then if we can't do our taste, we ask somebody else to taste it, and if we can't get anybody else to taste it, we can rely finally on shishim.
I think you're right. I think it's a good point. You're making a good point that this is hierarchical in its structure. First is the best.
But that's why I was saying I think you could have different theories as to why. One theory is it's potentially more makil. But the other theory would be like what you were saying is that Iker Hadin is really Tam, but it really just depends on the case.
Yeah, I don't think we're trying to be lenient. I think we're trying to be accurate. That's
Right,
what I
and
think.
accuracy sometimes is makil, but I guess in other cases it's not.
Right. All right. Actually, we should look at Avodah Zarah now, because in order to understand this Tosfot that I sent out, I want to look at Avodah Zarah. So get a copy of Avodah Zarah if you have.
Repeat the daf, please.
Yeah. So wait, let me just let's go to
Sign Gimel.
there's a Mishnah. The truth is there's a Mishnah on Ayin Gimel that we should look at. Wait a second. Let me think about this for a second. Where do we want to start? No, let's start at the Mishnah on Samech. The Mishnah on Samech Hey Amud Bet is implied that you should look at because we mention it. But let's start with the Mishnah on Samech Hey. Sorry, Samech Hey is a Mishnah Amud Bet, and then we'll go to Samech Vav. So Samech Hey, the Mishnah on Amud Bet. Here, is Joel here? Yeah, Joel. Joel, why don't you read can you read the Mishnah? You want to read the Mishnah?
Sure, why not? You want Samach Amud Bet, the Yain Nesach Shenafal Gabean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't go. Yeah. Yeah. Go
Don't
ahead.
go too fast. Yain Nesach Shenafal Gabe Anavim Yidichan Vehem Mutarot. All right. So you have idolatrous wine, and it falls on some grapes, right? Supposedly, well, we won't get into flavors yet. I won't say anything. You wash them off, and they're permissible, no problem.
All right, go on.
Imayu mevukaot. But if they're split open, the grapes are open, asurot, right? Then they become forbidden, right? Supposedly, I would assume you can't wash them off, right? The inside of the grape is going to absorb the flavor, and there's no hope at that point. So,
Right.
okay. Nafala gabe teinim. So now it's yain on nesech on figs, or gabe tamarim, or on dates. Imesh behem benot tentam asur. All right. So if it gives flavor, though the yain nesech gives flavor to the tamarim, to the dates, or to the figs, then they are forbidden. Okay. Umaseb baitos benzonan. All right. Shevi grogarot besfina.
Actually, you can stop there. You can stop there.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, not stop there, but just skip that story. The go was Zaklau.
Call it. Let me find it. Zaklau. Kol shebehanato benoten tam asor. Anything where you have benefit from its taste and it gives taste, I'll say, is forbidden. Something like that. Kol she'ein behanato benoten tam, and anything that doesn't have benefit in its giving flavor is mutar. What's the example? Now we'll see. Kegon chometz shenafal gabe greasing. So you have vinegar that falls on some sort of like porridge or something like that, or maybe I don't know, some sort of fetch, I think some people call it. I'm not sure what that is, but that apparently no one likes the vinegar on their greasing, and therefore it's permissible.
And therefore it's permissible, even though it's no tentam. That's
Exactly.
what hanato. Hanato means this is actually where we get a concept called the tam lifkam, or kind of, because if the flavor is a bad flavor, it's pogem, it ruins the food, then even if it's more gosh, even if the flavor is able to be perceived by the senses, it's still going to be permitted the food because because it ruined the food. It didn't improve the food. The real part I wanted to look at is the beginning, which Joel read very nicely. Yayin nesech that fell on grapes, you wash it. But really, the part that's interesting to us is yayin nesech that fell on cracked grapes. They're usser. That's really the whole thing I want. Yayin nesech that fell on cracked grapes. They're usser. Now we're going to get the topic in Samach. Now we're going to the Gemara and Samach Vav. Samach Vav Amud Aleph Chamra at the top of the page. And this is we're going to investigate, which really it's the study that we're actually having is, do we go by name or by tam when determining min b'mino? That's really the subject matter. In other words, we assumed up till now, where Rashi clearly said that the tam min b'mino you can lavchin at the tam, so you can't lavchin, and min b'sheina mino you can lavchin at the tam. But this Gemara is going to take a different approach, and it's going to say, well, there's a machloket actually. What determines that it's the same thing? Is it the name or is it the flavor? So, dear Noah, why don't you read Chamra?
Chamra tika be'invei divrei kol benoten tam. So, if old wine falls onto grapes, then everyone agrees that it's oser benoten tam.
Why?
Why?
Look at Rashi.
Chamra tika tamo nikar be'anavim.
Exactly.
The flavor of the old wine is noticeable in the grapes.
Why? Because they have different flavors.
Right, yeah, fair enough. Okay.
Because wine, even though it's from grapes, it isn't grapes anymore. It tastes different.
Mm-hmm.
So divrei hakol b'noten tam. Then the measure is noten tam. Go ahead.
Kamrachadata be'invei Abai amar b'mashu, Rava amar b'noten tam. So when it comes to new wine, Abaye, if I'm understanding correctly, is more machmir. He's saying it's an even smaller standard, even more
Right, the
stringent standard.
mashu. In other words, even a mashu of wine will forbid the grapes.
Whereas Rava says it's the same thing as if it were old wine.
Right. Because what's the difference here? What is Hamar Chadata? Well, Rashi.
I don't know. Maybe old wine is more vinegary and sour and doesn't taste like grapes, whereas new wine tastes more like grapes.
Read the second. Right, exactly. New wine is essentially grape juice. Grape juice and grapes have the same flavor. So look at the second Rashi on the page.
Kamra Charata benoten tam. V'chol chechadi tamar noten tam ve'ein tamo nikar avashiura b'shishim. So wherever it says noten tam but the flavor is not distinct, then you just measure in 60.
Right, like Rava said, right?
Yeah.
Rava said if you can't distinguish the flavor, use 60. And here Rashi agrees with Rava. This is very important for how we're going to paskin. Because the question is, do we paskin like Rava? Like we saw Rava just now, or like another opinion? So Abaye says b'mashu, and Rava says b'noten tam. Go ahead, Abaye. So now we're going to explain why.
Vayamar b'mashu batar tamaz liman idi v'idi chad tamahu dahavele min b'mino b'mashu. So Abaye says just any small trace of it, because we go after the flavor, and both of these just have one shared flavor because it's min b'mino, and the rule for min b'mino is b'mashu.
Right. Now go on, Rava.
Rav Amar b'noten tam batar shema zlinan b'hai shema lechud
Shema. I think you pronounce it Shema.
shma. Yeah, b'hai shema lechud b'hai shma lechud. The havale min b'sheino mino v'min b'sheino mino b'noten tam. So Rava says no. The din is noten tam. Shema I got is like the sub-classification. It's like a type.
No, well, Shema means its name, no?
Yeah, I know, but I thought it's like, I don't know, within the broader category of grape products, you have Tamra as one subclassification, and I don't know, grape, like the fruit of grape is another
You're saying it at least
subclassification.
has to be with, you're saying it has to be some similarity more than name. If I just like call a chicken if I call a chicken and I call a cow a chicken, they don't all of a sudden become the same thing. Is that what you're trying to say? It's just that the name is not enough.
I don't
I don't
remember.
know.
In one of the sources I looked up, I thought it actually explained Shema this way. Like I don't think I'm making this up, but I
Okay,
don't
I don't
remember.
know. I'm going to just take it, at least in the meantime, as my working hypothesis that it just means the name, and we're assuming
Anyway, yeah,
like other philosophers and people that names. The reason why people give things different names is because they're different intrinsically. So if I want to know what's intrinsically different, I can look at their names, and that will tell me that they're intrinsically different because it's not random. Names are not just like just choose anything. I give two different things different names because they are essentially different. So we go by the name to deter, and if it's the same name, then there's no essential difference between them, and therefore they're min b'mino. So wait,
yeah.
so again, what does Rava say? Rava
I mean,
Amar.
exactly. Yeah. Rava says the din is no ten tam. Basically, Abaye and Rava's disagreement is Abaye saying this is min
Because
b'mino
what are the
because it
two
all
different
has the
names?
same flavor, whereas
What are the two
Rava
different
saying
names
it's
according to Rava?
Chamra and Anavim.
Exactly. One is Hamar, one is Aravim, and therefore it's min b'she'eno mino.
Yeah,
And it's v'shim eno mino. You go by.
no ten tam.
Now wait a second. So what is the klal? The klal is min b'mino. What's the din by min b'mino? You go by noten tam.
You're saying Rava's klal that we saw in
No,
Hullin?
what are they according to both Rava and Abaye? Yeah. Do Rava and
Ra,
Abaye
Ra,
agree with
Ra,
Rava?
Rava, yeah, Rava and Abaye, yes, they are based. Yes, they agree that in min b'mino it's b'mashu,
And what did Rava
and
say? What
I
did
guess
Rava
they would
say?
agree. They would
What did
also
Rava say in
agree.
Gemara Hullin?
He said min b'mino b'shishin.
And what does Rava and and Abaye say over here? Again, repeat
Min
yourself.
b'mino b'mashu.
Okay. So what do we call that?
Akashya.
Yeah. Okay. We call it a difference. Yeah, exactly. Here he seems to be saying they both are assuming min b'mino is b'mashu. And by the way, Rashi on this exact page even tells us that's not the halacha. That min b'mino is b'shishi. But anyway,
But
that's what
this
it
is a
says.
different case.
And they're both agreeing. I'm just pointing out there's no machloket between Rava and Abaye. They both assume that. The only machloket is where they go after name. But if they would, or by taste. But if you go by name, then they both. If everybody agreed, if Abaye would agree with Rava about the name, then they would agree also. Everybody would agree that it'd be shishim. That would be mashu in min b'mino. Okay, now go on. Tanan.
Tnan, yain section of al gabei anavim v'chulei.
Now, which Mishnah is that?
The Mishnah that Rav Joel read in
Exactly. It's the Mishnah Rav Joel read. Perfect. You're batting 100 or batting. What do you say? Batting 1,000. You're getting everything right. Good.
Well, just wait.
So far, I'm trying to jinx you. That's how you jinx somebody. Okay, so Tanan, Yayin, that section, Afal Gebe Anavim. Well, which we say Bechule, actually, which part of the Mishnah is bothering us? Well, you'll see, it's the part of that I emphasize, the Bekaot. When they're Bekaot, then they're Asur. So go ahead. Kasal Chadaitcha.
Kasal kadaitach chamra charata beinve my love benoten tam, lo b'mashahu. So would it occur to you that this is new wine falling into grapes, and that the standard for that is no tentam? And the answer is
wait. Let's go back to the Mishnah. Look at the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Yayin nesek shenafal gevei anavim bekuot. I'm skipping. Mivukaot. Asurot. What is our question about the asurot? I'm trying to understand how to understand the word asurot. What does asurot mean? So I'll go back to our Gemara. And Kasa Chadaitcha.
so. This would be this is a kashiana baye.
So what does it mean? Lav benoten tam. Lav benoten tam.
As in that's exactly no. Yeah, that's exactly what Rava would say. Because you have two different names, and the din is no tentam.
Exactly, perfect. In other words, when it said asurot, what did it really mean? Asurot.
Well, the havamina right now is that it means benot tentam. But
exactly,
yes.
Not asurot in every circumstance, but asurot in notentam, because it's grapes and grape juice, and it's two different names, and therefore we go after name. And Rava says when it's therefore min b'she'eno mino, therefore it's b'notentam. And then we say lo b'mashu.
Right. So
in other words, this is actually a kasha on who now when we say lo b'mashu.
Kasha on Rava.
Right. I guess you could say it's a kasha on Rava. And as Rava, you're wrong. It's b'mashu. Okay. No, I think it was really originally we were asking a kasha on Abaye. And Abaye is answering lo b'mashu. When it says usher, it means usher b'mashu. I think it's really Abaye's answer. He's saying, no, I can tarets the Mishnah to mean usher b'mashu.
But meaning it could work for either one. So
Abaye is
we add a kasha and we add a kasha and we remove the kasha, but it's neutral right now.
Yeah,
that's what you're saying.
I think our kasha started off as being on Abaye, and then we're saying no. Abaye can answer you lo b'mashu. Now go continue. Ha.
Mida katane seifa ze klal kol shebahanato benoten tam asur kol she'ein bahanato benoten tam mutar miklal de benoten tam askinan. Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, this is a kasha on Abaye, because the end of the Mishnah is clearly just about the topic of noten tam, so that proves that also the Reisha of the Mishnah, which had to do with the wine falling on the grapes, was also about noten tam, and that proves that Abaye's din about b'mashu was wrong.
Right. Except maybe, now I'm going back a little bit and saying it's a support. Either way you're going to say it, it's a support. That's how Rava reads it. Rava can certainly read it like that. The whole Mishnah is talking about noten tam, and therefore this is also noten tam, and everything fits for Rava. Now, Abaye.
The Abaye matnitin bechamra atika bein bay. So, Abaye says that this has to do with old wine and grapes, which and even there, Abaye said that's two different flavors. No.
Yeah, exactly. Therefore, it's two different names and two different flavors. Everything is different. Names are different and flavors are different. And therefore, Abaye would agree that it's also benoten tam. And he says, our Mishnah is not a kasha on me. He says, Abaye, it's all noten tam because everything is different. Either way, you're going to, all right, that's the end of that sugya, and that I'm interested in, at least. And what is that? What do we see? Either way, what we see is that either we go after name or we go after taste, but everybody agrees that min b'mina, whatever it is, whatever is called min b'mina, is b'mashu, and that's going to be our problem with our Gemara in Hullin. So let's go back to the Tosfos now in Hullin. Tosfos in Hullin, basically, that's going to be a big problem because our Rava said what he said. So here, who feels left out that I didn't call on them enough? Here, Reuven, you feel left out,
Okay.
or you don't?
No. I'm happy to read. Do you want me to read the abbreviated?
I want you to read the
Amara?
abbreviated. Yeah, read the abbreviated. Here, maybe let me share it just because that way you'll see it. It's here. Oh, wrong page. I shared the wrong page. Stop. Try that again. Share. Where's that? Funny, it's offering me every. Oh, I see. It must be down there. Yeah, there it is. Yes. So I still find sometimes Zoom is not so easy to work. But here. Here. This is the place. I'm a Rav.
Okay. Amarava. Amarava chule ve'emor Rabbanan b'shishim lekaman beper kol habasar pasak hakontras kerebi Yehuda demim b'mino lo batil.
Okay,
Okay.
so stop there.
Yes. Okay. So in Per Kol Habasar, Rashi paskins like Rabbi Yehuda that in a case of min b'mino, there's no nullification possible.
Right. Now, we didn't see this. We
It'd
didn't
be
see
like
this
saying
Rabbi.
Mashahu, I think.
Right. We didn't see this Rabbi Yehuda inside, but there is a Rabbi Yehuda. We also didn't see where Rashi paskins like this, but there is a place where Rashi says the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda on Daf Kuf Tet, a long Rashi over there, and he says the halacha, and he tries to prove the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, that min b'mino is not b'shishim, it's not batel, b'shishim, it's never batel. And that's a kasha on Amarava, which we said over here, Amarava non b'shishim, and he said shishim is when? Dafka by min b'mino. And Rashi says, no, we don't paskin like Rava. But of course, we
just to say, and he brings an entourage of those who paskin like Rabbi Yehuda.
Exactly. Rashi writes like a Tosfot over there. There's a long Rashi over there, and he proves his point. And of course, we just saw in Avodah Zarah that Rashi said min b'mino is a shishim, and Tos is going to relate to that. But for now, he says that the long Rashi that everybody knows, the famous Rashi, passes like Rabbi Yehuda. And then he says mihu.
Mihu Rabbeinu Tam ba'atzmo haya doche dahad palig Rabbi Yochanan hata. Okay, so Rabbeinu Tam pushes aside the proof for holding like Rabbi Yehuda, Demi b'mino lo batil, because Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with that. Rabbi Yochanan holds min b'mino batil. So that's why, okay.
Exactly. And so Rabbeinu Tam does not agree with Rashi. That's the basic point I'm just trying to say. Machloket Rashi Rabbeinu Tam. Okay, and then the Tosfos has a long litany of places, and Rabbeinu Tam tries to show how every single place that seems to be a proof is not really a proof. But I skipped all that. Now Umilta. Now here is his kind of concluding remarks on his psak.
Umilta de Rava de Emor Rabbanan b'shishim aitu lepsak halacha.
Period.
Ubakontrast. Period. Okay. Period.
Translate.
Period. Okay.
That's a very important sentence.
When Rava, if I understand it correctly, when Rava says that the rabbis gave us shishim, this is the psak halacha.
Exactly. He said that as a halacha. He wasn't saying it as like according to some other shita or according to something. That was the halacha. Amar Rabbanan. He was giving like a concluding remark. Okay.
He wasn't
now?
saying it as an answer to a Gemara type problem. I mean,
Exactly.
he's giving a halacha, he's passing.
Right. It wasn't like in a context of a question, just out of the blue. He says, "I'm a Rabbanan," and he just gives us a pronouncement. So that's halacha. Ubekontris.
Ubekontris gufe psak beperek batra de mesechet avodah zara gabe pukta de Abai berava de hilcheta kerebi Yochanan de savar benosin tam v'ye nesech de kamar hatam b'mashu. Okay, pause there.
No. I think we read it wrong. You think you stopped at the wrong place. Ubekontris gufe psak beperek batra de baba gabe plugta de Abai berava. That's what we just got through. The halacha kerebi Yochanan.
Great. And Rashi himself, so there's no disagreement. Rashi himself rules like
Rabbi Yochanan also, not like Rabbi Yehuda. So we have one place where Rashi does agree with Rava. Because that we saw, I emphasized, that was the Rashi that we saw at the top of the page. This Savar, now go on. This Savar.
This Savar benosen tam ve yenesech.
Oh, actually, wait. Sorry, the period is the wrong place. I read it. I made a mistake. Rabbi Yochanan, the Savar benoten tam. Period. Let's put the period
okay,
there.
That makes more sense.
In other words, he holds like Rabbi Yochanan that it's benoten tam, which of course means shishim when you're talking about min b'mino, because you can't taste it, because it has no perceptible flavor, and not mashu. Okay, and now we're going to discuss that Gemara there in Avodah Zarah. V'yayin nesech. Go ahead.
Okay. V'yayin nesech deka amar hatam b'mashahu omer Rabbeinu tam dedafka
Wait. So what's the kasha? What's the kasha? That's our kasha that I asked.
That
was the kasha with. Is the yayin nesech deka amar hatam b'mashahu?
Yeah.
Which is wrong. It should be.
Right, because it's an isser, like all the other. You might think it's like the other isurin, that it should be benosen tam. But it's
should be benosen tam. Omer Rabbeinu Tam. How does he bitaretz?
Omer Rabbeinu Tam. I didn't fully understand this part. So Omer Rabbeinu Tam dedavka biyayin shenit nasech lifnei avodas kochavi. Deha amatniti.
Wait, what does that mean? Yayin nasech lifnei avodas zara.
So he says that the yayin nesek is referring specifically to wine that was actually poured out as a libation in front of non-Jews.
No, right. It was actually, so that would make it an Isser Deraita, right? It's an actual Avodah Zarah, so it's Isser Deraita.
Because I just assume whenever I see the phrase Yain Nesech that that's what that's referring to.
It's so not Stam Yain.
No, there isn't, right. There's another concept called Stan Yain. Sometimes we say Yain Nesech, we just mean Yain that a Goy touched.
Oh.
Or a Goy manufactured. So, but here we're talking about mamish yayin that was mitnasek. Now they poured it and then they regathered it. Like they poured it and they still have it in a bottle. They poured it back into a bottle. In other words, it's the actual yayin that was poured as a libation offering, and then they collected it and put it in a bottle. That's what they mean. They mean mamish yayin nesek. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. And this next piece, daha amatnitin diyayin biyayin umayim b'mayim kae.
So wait a second. That Mishnah, I think I brought it. I didn't originally send it to you. You should have tried to find that on your own. But I decided to bring it here. Or maybe I did send it to you. No, yeah, here. This is that Mishnah. Yayin nesech asur v'oser b'kolshu. You see that b'kolshu. That's not the shishim. Yayin b'yayin, umayim b'mayim, b'kolshu. Why is it b'kolshu? Because well, according to Rav Tom, because it's not because it's stam yayin, but because it's yayin shemit naseh. So he says like this: yayin b'yayin, umayim b'mayim, b'kolshu. Yayin b'mayim, which is what? What is yayin b'mayim that we called? What category would that be called?
Mi b'she'eno mino.
Exactly. Two different flavors. Umayim biyayin, also, but noten tam. Then we go by noten tam. So zeh klal. Min b'mino b'mashu. B'shelo b'mino b'noten tam. That sound. So we do go by mashu, by min b'mino. Now you could say, well, that's just a proof that Rabbi Yehuda is right. But what else could you say? What other possibilities could you say? If we don't pass like Rabbi Yehuda, if this is not what Rabbi Yehuda is saying, what is it? Yeah, Reuven, go ahead.
Yeah, well, we could say that the klal is for dafka yain nesach, or something that was for a libation. It's not a klal for all isurim shibatorah.
Exactly, it's a klal. Exactly, perfectly said. We have a rule that by yain nesach we do go. We sort of have a din that's similar to what Rabbi Yehuda would say. That min b'mino is b'mashu. Dafka but for some reason, if it's min b'she'eno mino, then it's benoten tam. Let me stop on that for a moment. What's the svara? Why is there a svara that we should hold by min b'mino, also according to Rabbi Yehuda, that we should hold by min b'mino mashu, but by b'she'eno mino noten tam? Why not just have it always be mashu? Let's say it's a avodah zarah, it should always be mashu. Why is it noten tam sometimes and sometimes mashu?
I guess
Yeah, Max.
You could say that if it's min b'mino, it's harder since it's harder to distinguish between, not just harder, since you can't distinguish between the two things, then it's just any drop. Whereas when you can make some distinction, then you can rely on tima.
Well, you just restated my question. You just said in this case you do this, and in this case you do this. You didn't say why.
But I'm saying because the difference is whether or not you can recognize a difference between the two.
Well, yes, it's true that you can't recognize the difference, but so what?
And so, since you can't recognize a difference, we're more worried about even a drop being
why. That's my question. Why?
Aggravating.
That's what I'm saying. You just defined the cases,
Okay,
and then you said that's the din. But my question is why, when we can't distinguish, that's the definition of min b'mino. Why in that case do we concern about a masha? That's my question. All right, I'll open.
Seems like we shouldn't now that you sorry, or if you have an answer.
I have an answer.
It just seems like it's a good kasha for Rabbeinu Tam's interpretation.
Well, actually, it's not a kasha. It's the Mishnah. This is a Mishnah. We got a Mishnah here. However, you're going to learn it, whether it's talking about all isurim, zeh, klal, minba. There's this statement that I have in yellow. Even if it's a klal, even about things that are not avodah zarah, that are everything, the whole world. Still, I'm asking that question. Why should it be? I'm asking a general question.
If there's no ta'am, then it's actually batel. It doesn't matter. It's actually canceled out. Now, why does that only apply to
why not in mino? We got to go the other side now.
Well, what I'm saying is because she'eno mino can be bottled and min mino can't be bottled. It's just
why not
thinking about it. Because that wine can infect other wine ad infinitum in a way that it can't infect.
Right. So I'll give it. Yeah, exactly. Okay, let me say what we're saying is like this. Is there bittul? I could give it like an example, like if I come to a party and everyone's dancing, and I come and like one of the rabbis in the Gemara, I take a fancy plate or a cup, and a plate, and I break it, and I make a huge noise, and everyone can't believe that I broke this expensive thing, and everyone stops dancing because I did an action that's like contradictory to what was going on. And then there's like hitnagdut. But if I come to the party and I start dancing with everybody else, then I'm supporting what's going on. Maybe what I want to say, like by this mashal, is that when you have min b'mino, and you add some more, if there's wine there, and I added some non-kosher wine, there's nothing mitnaged to it. There's nothing opposing it. It just joins in with the group. It's helping the flavor. It's enhancing the strength of the flavor. There's more wine flavor now. They're all working towards the same end. So therefore, it's not batel. It's adding to the movement, to the experience. But when it's min b'sheina, so therefore it's not batel. Bittel only happens when the concept of bittel is when it becomes insignificant compared to the other things that are going on. If I come into the party, maybe and I drop a small little pin on the floor, it's insignificant. So it's batel to the event. I didn't, in other words, if I add a tiny drop of treif to a large kosher of another flavor, then it's overpowered. There's a conflict, and one overpowers the other. But when there's no conflict, there's no possibility of an overpowering because they're both working in the same direction. I think that's kind of what you were saying, Ari, but I just said it in more words.
Yeah. Another like physical metaphor would be like oil and water, that we know, like, they actually don't mix even if they're together. I don't know if that's quite feels as true with wine and water, but it is maybe in a spiritual
Well, wine
sense.
and water do mix. It's not a question of whether they mix or not. There's a question of whether there's an opposition. You can only have bittul when there's an opposition. When there's no opposition, says Rabbi Yehuda, there's never bittul. And what this is saying is that when it's a avodah zorah, this is actually, I forget which, maybe Lexi remembers. There's one of the Rishonim that says exactly what I'm saying. When it's a avodah zorah and kosher wine, well, sorry, I won't say. I don't have it. I don't remember exactly, so I won't say. But the point is, there's no opposition here. So the
distinction between yain nesach versus stam yinam?
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying. When it's yain stam yainam midoraitas, let's say mutter, and so therefore there's no opposite. Well, I don't know. I don't want to get to it. But let's drop it. I don't have it clearly in my head. I didn't think about this ahead of time, so I don't want to say about it. But let's go back to the Tosfos.
So Nachum,
Yeah.
you're saying, sounds very good to me, that since it's the same, there's no distinction. When there's no distinction, there's no opposition. When there's no opposition, there's no overwhelming. When there's no overwhelming, you're left with Easter.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. That's good.
Thank you for clarifying that. So that's the opinion. But wait, we went a little bit of far field. Our real question was about this Tosfos was how do we explain it? And I think Reuven already guessed what Rabbeinu Tam is saying. Maybe he read Rabbeinu Tam, but Rabbeinu Tam says that's not a proof for Rabbi. That Mishnah is not a proof for Rabbi Yehuda. That Mishnah, which is what Rashi wanted to say, that Mishnah is actually just talking about Yain Nesech, and by Yain Nesech, we have a different din. The Dafka here, so of Omer Rabbeinu Tam, from here.
From Omer Rabbeinu Tam, the Dafka b'yain shenit nesech b'fnei avodas kochavim. Deha amatnitin, deyain b'yain umayim b'mayim ka'eh. Right. Umayim b'mayim efshar liyot ela b'nit nesech. And when that Mishnah talks about mayim b'mayim, it has to be referring to one of that amount of water being also dafka shenit nesech. Otherwise, it's
right,
just
because water is never going to be treif. Water is not normally treif unless it was poured on avodah zarah. So mayim, when it says mayim b'mayim, it's clearly talking about water that was poured as a water libation. So therefore, the whole Mishnah is talking about libation offerings, and therefore I can say that this Mishnah is only talking about avodah zarah, mamash avodah zarah. Okay, ubetshuvot hagaonim.
Ubetshuvot hagaonim, Rabbeinu Yosef tuv elem matzah.
Oh, very good.
Well, I looked him up.
Yeah, it's his name.
French Tosfos. Yeah. Tuv Elam, Matzah Rabbeinu Tam Yain Nesech Shenit
No,
Nesech.
Matzah Rabbeinu Tam. It means like this. Rabbeinu Tam found in the tshuva. You have to read it all backwards. Rabbeinu, you have to read the whole sentence backwards. Rabbeinu Tam found in the tshuva of Rabbi Yosef the following.
Okay, let me try that again. Okay, I guess it's the reverse of how I read it. Okay. Ubetshuvas hageonim Rabbeinu Yosef Tov Elem Matzah Rabbeinu Tam Yain Nesech Shenit Nesech Lifnei Avodas Kochavim Asur Bahana'a Be'eino Bato Afilu Be'elef Kamo Sheshaninu Ve'elu Asurin Ve'isuran Bekol
Isuran Bekol Shehu. So he just proved. He just says he found in the tshuva of the Gaonim that Yain Nesech, that was Nit Nasech, is Asur B'Mashu. And now he learns from this Michlal.
Michlal Destam Yenam Usha'ar Isurin Chutz Mitevel Ve'yain Nesech Bein B'mino Bein Shelo B'mino B'nosen Ta'am. Okay, I had some trouble parsing this last. Yeah, sorry.
No, I think you said it right. Let's try. Give it a try.
Okay, so we're learning out from this that,
in other words, if we said that Yisurin, if we said that they're Asur B'Mashu who is Yain Nesech, then we can make an inference that Stam Yenam and Shar Isurim, and I'll skip the exceptions.
right? That's right. Stam Yenam and Shar Isurin are Benos and Tam, and we have our two exceptions, which are Yen Nesech and Teva.
Exactly.
Those are our two.
So he's saying from the fact that the Gaonim said that Yain Nesech is Asur B'Mashu, that implies that that's like a humra, and that's an extra rule. That's not the normal rule. So therefore, the normal rule must be that it's even though it's min b'mino, it's batel ben noten tam. Agreed. So that's the basic gist of the Tosfot, that he's proving that we don't hold like Rabbi Yehuda, that we only hold that Yayin Nesech in particular is Asur B'Mashu. Only in a case of min b'mino, right? You have two conditions. We do, if it's min b'mino, then we have Mashu by Yayin Nesech. And if it's Yayin Nesech but Eino Mino, then it's the normal law of Shishim. And if it's anything else, it's B'Shishim, even if it's Mino. So that comes back to our statement of Rav. So he justified the statement of Rav on page Sadi Zayin. And he rejects the Rashi on Kuftet, but he accepts the Rashi in Avodah Zarah and Samach Vav. Questions, comments? Lexi, what are you thinking?
I mean, I don't have like a burning thought to add to it. I do think that in general, like a lot of the sugyot and the hisvos that we're looking at today, they're good background because a lot of the stuff that we end up kind of landing on as assumed rules are like kind of a mess within the Gemara itself, right? That like we end up taking, because like we end up poskening, right? That like we know is shishim, other than in these cases, we do posken, as the Tosfot noted, the way that Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish do. And yet, if you only read these sugyas and you didn't read the Rishonim, that would be like very much not move on me'elav. And so
Right.
I think these are one of the cases where the Tosfot as like harmonizers are particularly useful and also particularly struggling because we have sugyas that even by our poskening rules seem to be roughly in clash with one another. But we end up having, yeah, like we have to sort of rationalize why there are particular cases where we know is more chumradik, right? Again, the yain nesach, the tevel, because tevel, you know, can be fixed really easily, so therefore it also can oser really easily. maybe at some point we'll get to the Devar Sheyesh Lo Matirin we know and why that's like its own specific case, but yeah.
Right.
I would.
Right. I think you make a good point. Like there's many Gemaras that all seem to be talking. We seem to be living in a world where min b'mino is aser b'mashu.
I would add, this is very good. I would add that he does it, the Tosfos does, when you see the full Tosfos, an incredible job in lining up the different major shitot on two, reduces it to an opposition to one major machlokas. Then of course you have to deal with which for him will be the outliers. But to go through and to figure out all the rabbis that we didn't name today, that's pretty good. Pretty good work.
Any other questions or comments before we go? Yeah, Ori.
Just for my benefit to organize here, where does Rabbi Yehuda's Shita appear? In which case? That was being quoted here?
I think it's in Kuf.
In Hullin also.
In Hullin Kuf Tet.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's opposed to Rabbah.
we didn't see. I think
I
it's
don't think
actually
it's on
maybe I sent it out in the sources that I sent. The machlokas between. Actually, if I share my screen for a second, I think it's. Yeah, if you look in Kuf Tet, it says Rabbi Yehuda l'taime de Amar min b'mino lo batil. That's in Kuf Tet. But also in the sources that I sent out, which is a different place. Wait, share screen. Just a second. I'll just show you quickly.
You sent us the other Gemara in Avodah Zarah, which I thought explained a lot of this. It actually helped.
Yeah, we didn't see everything that I sent out.
But it establishes the idea that Yain Nesech and Tevel are different, which is very helpful.
Yeah. Here's the ratio. This is the Gemara that we didn't have time to read. Rav Shmuel, the Amri Travayu Kol Isurin Shabbatorah b'min an b'mashu. That's like Rav Yehuda. Min b'min an b'mashu. Rav Yochanan b'Reish Lakish the Amri Travayu Kol Isurin Shabbatorah bein b'min an bein shelo b'min an b'tam chutz mitel v'yayin neseh. So that's the machloket that's the machloket that Tosfos mentioned, that we paskin like Rabbi Yochanan. Benoten tam. We paskin like benoten tam, like Rabbi Yochanan. And not like Rav Shmuel. That's not Rabbi Yehuda. The Rabbi Yehuda is on Kuf Tet in Hullin. Okay. Just to share that. Okay, Shkoyach. Next week we'll continue in the Gemara on Daf Kuf Tet. Sorry, not Kuf Tet. Sorry, Tzadi. Where we left off.
Tzadi Zayin Amud Bet.
Tzadi Zayin Amud Bet. And we'll see how far we can get into Tzadi Chet. Okay. Shkoyach, everybody. Laila Tov.
Thank you, Rav Nachum. Thank you.